Welcome to City Cinematheque, where the art and pleasure in the movies are the subject of serious discussion. I'm your host, Jerry Carlson. I teach film studies at the City College of the City University of New York. Today, it's our immense pleasure to present the 1966 Swedish film, Persona, written and directed by Ingmar Bergman. Now, this is a film that's been listed several times as one of the 10 greatest films ever made. Whether you agree with that or not, it's certainly a major work of modernist cinema and of European cinema from the 1960s. It offers great performances by Ullmann and Bibi Andersson. We'll be talking about that and other issues of Bergman's art and career after today's screening. It's a pleasure to welcome to City Cinematheque the well-known film and theater critic John Simon as our discussant. Now, savor this opportunity to see Ingmar Bergman's Persona. Welcome back from what is really a legendary film of European film history from the 1960s. As I said in the introduction, this is a film that's popped up several times as one of the 10 greatest films ever made. I'm not so sure about what those lists exactly mean, but it does mean that this is a rich, wonderful work that has fascinated people now for well over 40 years. And one of the people who has been fascinated by that and has written extremely well about it is the theater and film critic John Simon. John is known to many of our viewers for his more than 35 years at 36 years as a theater, but also film critic for New York Magazine. He's been freelancing all these years for publications like the New York Times Book Review, for the Weekly Standard, where he's still writing. And he's currently the theater critic for the Westchester Guardian and the Yonkers Tribune. He's also someone who, in 1974, published one of the key books in Ingmar Bergman studies in English called Ingmar Bergman Directs. And it's a book in which he does an extraordinary bit of an analytical work on Persona, a film that certainly he's looked at frame by frame any number of times. Welcome to City Cinematheque, John.
Thank you.
Let's step back from Persona to Ingmar Bergman. As a theater and film critic, perhaps an ideal profession to be looking at a career like Bergman's, when did you first encounter Bergman, and when did you become, convinced that he was somebody you should be following and taking seriously?
Well, the first Bergman film I saw was what was released in America as The Naked Night, a rather awful title, which has nothing to do with Bergman's title, which is what I call the film. It's The Clown's Evening. Right. In Britain, it is known as what is it? Tinsel?
Sawdust and Tinsel. Sawdust and Tinsel, right.
But that has never caught on in this country as a title. But under any title, it's an important and wonderful film. It may even be the first Bergman film that was truly great, although there were some very good ones before that. And when I went to see it, I didn't know who Bergman was, and I expected a typical sort of Swedish, more or less sexy, polite, semi-porn kind of film. It was nothing of the sort. It was something very moving and very serious and very important. So I was hooked on Bergman right then and have been ever since.
So where do you think he fits? I mean, Bergman is a name you couldn't avoid 35 or 40 years ago. And now the films, I think, when we look back at them, are the same quality as we've always known they were. But he's a little bit out of fashion these days. How do you fit him into this explosion of creativity in European cinema?
Well, as to being out of fashion, the moment someone is dead and not producing new films, that almost automatically makes him out of fashion. But he's not out of fashion with the cognoscenti. He's not out of fashion with film museums, film festivals, any kind of film cinematheques, and so on. And he's acknowledged to be one of the great masters of cinema of all time. Other than that, all I can say is that I wish more of his films were being shown today and yesterday and tomorrow, and perhaps someday they will be.
Okay. Well, that's good. Let's talk about some of the features of his art that you very specifically admire. He's known as one of the great directors, both in stage but in film, that we can see of actors and of actresses. What do you think makes these performances so special with him?
Well, first of all, of course, he either writes the scenario of the screenplay of his films, or co-writes it, or at the very least works, which is very rarely, works with someone else's screenplay, but it's a person that's very close to him and very kindred to him. So, like all true film artists, he isn't just a director, he is also the writer. And that makes a big difference. And not only that, but he is someone who writes the thing before he, of course, makes the film, and then he makes departures from the screenplay. So that makes for a very fascinating kind of study object for a critic, to compare the written scenario with the finished film, which always has significant differences. For the better usually, but sometimes not. Well, first of all, he's a serious filmmaker. He is not humorless, as some people think, and Scandinavians are reputed to be very serious people, but they're no more serious than you and I. But he is serious in the sense that he takes the art of cinema very seriously, and he makes films that are not just for the masses. They're for people who think, for people who read, for people who know literature, and anybody else who is willing to come along for the ride. And of course, he has made many friends among non-intellectuals as well. But he is essentially a cerebral filmmaker, because he analyzes people, situations, meanings of life, meanings of certain careers, meanings of certain professions, and meanings of relationships. He's very much interested in man-woman relationships, whether in marriage or out of marriage. And he has contributed a great deal to our understanding of sex, not so much sex in the bedroom as sex prior to the bedroom and after the bedroom. As such, he is really one of the great masters of love, of eroticism, of human sexual, marital, extramarital relationships. And I think most of us are interested in those relationships, and therefore he speaks to a great many of us, and speaks profoundly and eloquently. And of course, he's a master of language. Now, people who know Swedish, which I don't, tell me that it took him a while to become as great a writer as he is a director. But he finally made it, and the later films, even to the very, how should I say, critical eye of Swedish literary folks and literary critics, has finally made the grade, and he is now accepted as a literary genius as well.
Well, that's quite a package, and it's a package I think we need to remember about. That is that we're talking about a complete filmmaker in the way in which you're talking about it, somebody who is writing and controlling the vision, someone who is working with, and he worked traditionally with many of the same great craftspeople and artists, yes. Most notably somebody like Sven Nykvist. In this film, we were at a peak of black and white cinematography and its capacities, yes. In this film. And then the repertoire of actors.
Yes, he has his repertory company, to which he adds and from which he subtracts occasionally. But basically there are certain great male and female film actors and stage actors too who work for him, and whom he visualizes when he writes his scripts. And there's consequently something very germane about the performances, because they were tailored for those artists. which is not to say that they're limited, because those artists have great range. But actresses like Harriet Andersson, Bibi Andersson, Liv Ullmann, Gunnar Lindblom, there are quite a few of them, Eva Dahlbeck, who have worked for him many times,
Right.
and very brilliantly, and among the men, Gunnar Björnstrand, Max von Sydow, Hasse Ekman, a few others.
Erland Josephson.
Yes, Josephson, certainly. And they're all wonderful actors, and they've all showed themselves to be very versatile and very incisive and very winning.
Absolutely. Well, it's very interesting that you bring it up in that way, because I had found out while looking again into persona, because this is the kind of artist that as time goes by, more and more comes out about him in a very positive way. We understand him. And I had always understood that this film came from the fact that he had spent some time in a hospital. And as a consequence of that experience, he thought about writing this script. What I had not known is that he had already recognized that Bibi Andersson and Liv Ullmann were people he wanted to have working together in a film. He would cast them in a film that, because of his illness, didn't take place, but then that allowed him to do exactly what you described, and that is to write the new script when he had the two actresses in mind. So this is a perfect example of this integration of all aspects here, that this was written specifically for these two actresses.
Yes, he detected a great similarity in their looks. I personally do not see it, but that doesn't matter. What matters is what he saw. He saw them as being very similar, and therefore he got the idea of two women who sort of bleed into each other, both with happy and unhappy consequences. And that's how the idea. And of course, yes, he was in a hospital with something called Meniere's disease, although I've seen references to other illnesses. But no, it was Meniere's disease, which is something in the ear which makes you lose your balance.
Right.
And as a result, you see a woman in the early sequence there with her head hanging down off the bed. There is a sense of a balance problem with some of the characters, both physical balance and, by extension, moral balance, which comes into play in the story.
One of the things, coming back to the actresses in this, is one of the things he consistently does through this film that's so interesting that adds to the power of this particular development of the relationship, and certainly the powerful performances he gets out of both actresses, is that he doesn't use the kind of normal cutting in which you have a conversation and you keep cutting back and forth between people. And that's the norm in everything from soap operas to very high quality Hollywood product. But here he strays away from that.
Well, in a very famous scene from the film, he tells the same bit of conversation, of dialogue twice, once focusing on Liv Ullmann, and then the same thing in reverse focusing on Bibi Andersson, but not cross-cutting.
Right.
And that's very interesting, because it shows how the same thoughts, the same words affect these two different people. And you can see that best if you show them in terms of the same particular bit of speech, rather than in separate scenes of different kinds. But anyway, yes, it is a film about fusion and separation, about becoming one and becoming two, about blending and contrasting. And as I said in my book about Bergman, I think a lot of it goes back to a Strindberg play, since Bergman was a great admirer of Strindberg, The Stronger, in which two women sit at a cafe table and one keeps talking and one is silent and smiles. And it turns out that the silent one has become the mistress of the husband of the speaking one. And the question is, which one is the stronger? And there's Yves Steinberg himself seems to have said that the speaking one was ultimately the stronger, but most of us critics think that it's the silent one who's strong. But it doesn't matter. It means that there is a contest between people,
Right.
as there is a contest between the two women in Persona.
No, I think that worked well. Now, while we're talking about that kind of finding that thread of character analysis and this competition, there's also the other aspect of the film that may be confounding to a number of people, and that is this film has a lot of images in it that aren't directly related to that relationship. And so why do you think that is all there? I mean, what's up with him aesthetically with that?
Well, that whole opening sequence of shots, which show very different things in brief sequence, it has been said with some justification that in some ways that summarizes his career as a director. It has also been said it summarizes the history of cinema in some ways. To this day, I think it's a bit mysterious, right, because it's hard to see the connection between some of those shots. Some of them one can see the connections, others it's hard. But clearly it has something to do with the past, his past and cinema's past. And indeed the original title of the film was Cinema or Cinematography. And it's, in a way, it is a story of film in terms of two characters who interact. It's interesting that no one has said, and it hasn't occurred to me until now, that Liv Ullmann is Norwegian, and when she came to Sweden to act, she had a very strong Norwegian accent. And it may be that the reason Bergman thought of the film as one woman not speaking was to give a chance to Liv Ullmann not to speak Swedish with a Norwegian accent.
You are correct, because Bibi Andersson actually tells that story, because Bibi Andersson went to Ingmar Bergman and said, why am I always the one who has to play the dumber one? I'm always the naive one. And Bergman said to her, yes, but we all know how good Liv is, but this is her first picture in Sweden, so you have to have all the words. You're the one who will get the words here. And so your inference is backed up by exactly his casting strategy. It makes perfect sense.
I think both women are extremely attractive. I'm glad to say that I once had a date with Bibi Andersson, took her to see a Strindberg play directed by Ingmar Bergman, and afterwards we went to the Opera Cafe and had a good time discussing what we saw. And I also once had lunch with Liv Ullmann. Unfortunately, the press agent insisted on being there too, but it didn't matter that much. But anyway, they're two lovely women, but lovely in different ways. Ullmann is more of a woman, and Bibi is more of a girl woman. And Bibi also is more refined looking and more sophisticated looking, whereas in Liv there's a kind of healthy, down-to-earth, almost peasant quality, which I'm not using as a pejorative.
Right.
Peasants are fine in their own way. So there is this contrast between the two women, which serves the film very well. And of course, speech and silence are a great contrast, which also serves the film very well.
Well, and you know, that perceived difference that you and I may see in their looks, that Bergman perceived as a similarity in ways, he brings all of his skills, all of his art as a man arranging mise-en-scène or working with Sven Nykvist for those scenes of their fusion. Because if you and I are looking at the film and say, oh, well, these are two very different looking women, he uses all of the cinematic trickery to get us to those moments of fusion and crossover in which you say, oh, my goodness, who is who here? As in fact, as particularly Sister Alma is asking.
Yes, of course, the great climax is when the two faces merge into one face.
Right.
Which neither woman quite recognized as being in any way herself. They all said, "Who is this?" Both of them. But anyway, it is really a story of, if you like, the artist, the actress, played by Liv Ullmann, and the nurse, the, how should I say, the ordinary human being,
Right,
with
absolutely.
with an ordinary human profession, and how the two of them navigate this strange relationship they're in. Of course, well, you have to bear in mind the title persona, which means a character played on the stage is a persona. Right. So the question is only Liv Ullmann a persona when she's playing in a scene from a Greek tragedy, from
It's Electra.
From Electra, although at sometimes Bergman called it Phaedra. He himself wasn't quite sure what it was.
So an all-purpose Greek tragedy.
Yeah. So is that only a persona when an actress plays a part on stage, or could it be a persona that we always play when we're in our ordinary human intercourse? We are still playing some kind of a role. And the reason the actress turns silent, supposedly or actually, is that she feels that there's something untrue, unreal, ungenuine about acting, and she figures she will become silent because that's one way to be totally oneself and not to play a role. But then it turns out that even being silent is playing a role of some kind.
And this is also a film, while it's a chamber piece that is structured around these two women, there are these notable intrusions of the exterior world in the film. I mean, one being the footage, television newsreel footage from Vietnam, and the other one, of course, being the famous photograph from the Warsaw ghetto.
Yes.
Bergman is sometimes accused by those unsympathetic to him of being somebody locked into his own world and not, interested in those interior issues. I've never found it that to be the case. How do you read why he's putting those images in here?
Well, I guess it's connecting this very personal situation between these two women to a social, historical context. On the one hand, the Buddhist monk who immolates himself by fire makes a great sacrifice, even greater, if you will, than that of the actress who sacrifices words. And the other one, of course, is the brutality of life, the horrors of history, the Warsaw Ghetto and Nazism and all those terrors, and how that somehow perhaps influences any kind of human relationship, living in a world in which that kind of violence against oneself,
right,
against others, is possible and perhaps even frequent. So that, in a way, is giving the personal conflict a historical conflict background and suggesting relationship between the two.
Right. Right. One of the other things, we've talked a little bit about voice and performance, but I just wanted us to note that, these are great images in this film that Nyquist produced. But this is also a film full of great sounds. That is, that the kind of sound montage in this film is no less important than the great images. I'm thinking, for example, of the sound of the horn off in the middle of the night that helps create the extraordinary dream effect of this.
Yes, yeah. Well, of course, the whole film is partly waking and partly dreams. But we never know for sure which is which and when one stops and the other starts. And that's part of, I guess, what Bergman is trying to say, that there isn't that much difference between waking life and dreaming life, that they're both equally important, equally significant, equally revelatory of character and perhaps destiny, so that it really doesn't matter where waking ends and dream begins and where dream ends and waking begins. It's all part of the same life that we live. And the whole sequence with the husband, with the actress's husband, played by the great Gunnar Björnstrand, is presumably a dream.
Yeah.
And yet it is a dream that tells a lot about life and about the way both these women view life. Because one of them gets involved with this husband and the other one is there watching it.
Right.
So it's really a ménage à trois in some way.
Right. Absolutely, absolutely the case. Now, the one thing about television is it doesn't have some of the same ambiguities that Bergman is able to play with. And one of the things that's not ambiguous in our life here is that we've run out of time. We've run out of our 30 minutes with Ingmar Bergman and John Simon. If you'd like more information about this particular series, more generally about City Cinematheque, or even in a broader sense about what we do here at CUNY TV, you can find out by visiting our website. Please visit www.cuny.tv. You'll find click-ons there in which you can send in commentary, or you can get on our e-list to know about upcoming screenings on City Cinematheque. So please visit www.cuny.tv. John, I can't tell you what a pleasure it's been to have you here with your eloquence, your knowledge, and also the way in which you make the case we should all be able to make for Ingmar Bergman. I hope you'll join us again sometime on City Cinematheque.
Thank you. I would love to.
Great. Terrific. And thank you for joining us here for the special pleasure of seeing Ingmar Bergman's persona. I hope you join us again as we stroll through the archives of film history on City Cinematheque. Bye-bye for now.